We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. What's going on? We continue our position profiles by breaking down the defensive ends, the edges, whatever you want to call them. The Bears need pass rush help, and we're going to be talking all about that today. And also, if you haven't already, make sure to download our free draft guide. Link down below in the description. Over 120 different player profiles, and it's growing. Literally just published out a brand new version of it right now. That link, it will not change, so feel free to favorite it so that anytime that there's a new update, basically anytime that a show comes out, I have updated that. So make sure to check it out with top 30 visits and a couple other things that I'm going to be adding into it. So make sure to download it. Think about donating if you want to, but it's absolutely free just to help get the word out amongst Bears fans on who to draft. So, like we said, we're going to be talking about this edge group, and this really is a very, very deep class. Now, talked about this with the running backs during the running back episode, but this defensive end class, there's like one very, very good prospect, which we'll talk about with like Abdul Carter. But then there's a whole bunch that kind of can go all the way down to the 4th round. And one of my favorite little graphics that I saw was actually on the Todd McShay show. Try to say that 5 times fast. But on the McShay show, he talked about the 3-year sample size of how many defensive ends, those edges, how many edges have gone in the last 3 years in the first 4 rounds. And what he found was 15.6 edges have gone in the first 4 rounds this year, just to kind of show how good this class is. He's projecting, like in his rankings and many others, the projection is 25. So around 10 more are projected to go in the first 4 rounds. So what does this mean, right? Because this can mean a couple things. First off, there's a lot of talent at this defensive end space. And the second thing too, just because the talent is there doesn't mean necessarily that they are going to be drafted there. So you might see some start to drop out. And kind of in that same vein, where are they projected to go? This is Todd McShay's rankings, right? So in that 3-year sample size, 5.3 get drafted in the first round. This year, the projection is 7 getting taken in the first round. And then 3 in the second round, the average is 4.3, so a little down right there. But then in the 3rd round, Todd McShay has 9 projected to go in the 3rd, and it's on average 3.3 on the 3-year average, just insane. And then round 4, 6 are projected to go, and the 3-year average is 2.7. So what you're seeing, there's some good depth that we're going to be covering today, and it's not just the first round. And I'll tell you too, I see a lot of these players as potential people that the Bears will go crazy for. So just to get the first one out of the way, the top dog, I want to just talk about Abdul Carter a little bit. So we're going to kind of start at the top and we're going to trickle our way down. So go through the top dog. Who could we get with the first round pick if there is anybody that we want to get with that first round pick? Break down the second round studs, talk about round 3, and then go through the sleepers. So first thing, Abdul Carter. The Bears are probably not going to get this guy. He's super bendy, super flexible. Now, he does have a foot injury that some people are starting to get concerned about, but I don't know. I can't see him lasting till 10. Quite frankly, I think he's the odds-on favorite to go number 2 overall just because he's just that good. So Abdul Carter, Penn State, 6'3", 250, incredibly bendy, reminds me of Micah Parsons, reminds everybody of Micah Parsons, just with the kind of leaner body type, and just really being able to bend and burst around the edges. Just an absolute impressive athlete, was PFF's 4th highest graded edge. So are the Bears going to get him? Nope. But if they do, they would have to trade up. I just can't see him getting past number 2 unless the foot injury is in fact more serious than what some people are kind of speculating that it is. But I just personally, that's one of those smoke screens that I think is more of just smoke. He's just very, very talented. I'd be shocked. I think Mason Graham, if anyone, is going to drop not an Abdul Carter. So let's get into our first round prospects. And before we go into this, I actually wanted to pull up some interesting stats about Dennis Allen and the defensive end that he's trying to look for, because I hear a lot of people, and myself included, talk about the Dennis Allen defensive end and who could he be trying to target at this defensive end spot. And I wanted to just kind of go through it and see who are the people that they did draft at the New Orleans Saints to kind of help us understand who might be somebody that kind of checks those boxes as a true Dennis Allen defensive end. And when I went through it, I looked at like the rounds 1, 2, and 3 to really kind of understand who did they actually draft. And there was 4 that they drafted. And there were some common takeaways, because first off, they drafted Marcus Davenport, Peyton Turner, and Trey Hendrickson, and Isaiah Foskey, all of which are 6'4" or taller. Trey Hendrickson was the shortest at 6'4", but Peyton Turner at the combine measured in at 6'5", 270. Marcus Davenport, 6'6", 264. Foskey was 6'5", 264. And then Trey Hendrickson, 6'4", 266. So the key thing, they're all 260 plus. They're all, like we kind of know, he likes his big defensive ends. That's the type of caliber that he likes. And even when he brought in Chase Young, very large defensive end that they signed as a free agent. But something that I found very interesting, first, besides the fact that Marcus Davenport, small school guy out of UTSA, Peyton Turner, small school guy out of Houston, Trey Hendrickson, small school guy out of FAU, Isaiah Foskey, the only not small school guy coming out of Notre Dame. But the other piece is a lot of people talk about the run stuff ability or projects that they could kind of get something out of. When you look back at it, because this is something that I wanted to do, Marcus Davenport had a 90 pass rush PFF grade and was a good pass rusher coming out. Peyton Turner, 90 pass rush grade, which is elite coming out of college. Trey Hendrickson, 90.8 pass rush grade coming out of college. Very, very high productive pass rush out of big defensive ends. And Isaiah Foskey, exception to the rule, 74 pass rush grade. But for anybody that follows Notre Dame, you know that he had 2 back-to-back seasons of 11 sacks. So still very good pass rush effectiveness, even though that he hasn't done too great at the pro level. But what I wanted to just call out here is it's not just the run stuff ability that I think we should hold ourselves up on when we start going through some of these prospects. All that we're seeing is he likes big defensive ends that can rush the passer. And I think, yet again, GMs do officially make the pick, but you know that defensive coordinators do usually have the GM's ear of like, hey, here's the type of player that I would like to see. So I wanted to just kind of call that out as something, because I found it a little interesting that it's not just projects, not just run defenders, but that pass rush that really seems to be what they were trying to get at the Saints level. So let's get into these first round prospects. Like we already said, we got Abdul Carter out of the way, but who are the other 7 that Todd McShay was talking about? Well, those other 7, those other 6 that we got to talk about, they all kind of have question marks. And I think this is the hardest part about the Bears with this whole defensive end scenario, because at this defensive end spot, everybody has a question mark. Right now, the top rated guy, because I have the consensus grades on the far left of the graphic for those on YouTube, Jalen Walker is the highest graded, not named Abdul Carter. And out of Georgia, he's very, very slight, very linebacker-y, doesn't really fit that big defensive end mold. Shamar Stewart fits the big defensive end mold, but only has 1.5 sacks. He's not really a pass rusher. Mikael Williams, he has more of a pass rush game than Shamar Stewart, and he has a good frame, but not a lot of pass rush production, but just a good solid floor as a run defender. And then you get down to the Mike Green and James Pierce, 2 of my favorite defensive ends, but not from a personal perspective, because James Pierce, a lot of questions about his teammates. People are saying that, hey, his teammates don't like this guy. They tried to not put him in front of the audience. Like, there's a lot of personal questions about who he is as a person. And Mike Green, we've talked about the sexual assault allegations that were around him in high school and then going into his freshman year at college. And last but not least, Donovan Ezaraku. I really like this guy, but severe questions about how he defends the run and a little bit lighter of a frame. So this is the downside of this defensive end class is I feel it's deep if you're like pick 15 and stuff like that. I think the later in the first round, you like some of these players, but they all kind of have their question marks. So as we go through this, someone who I do feel is probably at the top of the Bears list, and a lot of other people think is on the top of the Bears list, is Mikael Williams. Like we were talking about out of Georgia, 6'5", 260. So he does fit that size profile. But like what we talked about before, just that pass rush, 70.7 PFF grade, only had 5 sacks last season. But at the same time, wasn't necessarily asked too much to rush the passer. And that's the big piece. And to me, he reminds me a lot of Carl Granderson coming out, where he's got this good floor of a run defender. But this is the person who, if you told me the Bears drafted a defensive end, my guess is that it's Mikael Williams. I like him. I'm not in love with this guy. He's actually my edge 5. He's the consensus edge 4. I think he's good, but I just think that there's better defensive ends that are out there that I just like. And yet again, my edge rankings are people that I like, that I would take, or people that I like as I watch the prospect, not necessarily who I think the Bears have on their big board. But I feel like Mikael Williams, he's a good blend if they do want someone with some good upside. Because I will say, when you put on the tape, he's got some great pop in his hands. He does have some potential to his game, and he really wasn't asked to rush a whole lot when it came down to Georgia. So I think that there's some upside. He's got the traits that you'd like to see, but I just don't love him at that whole number 10 spot. He's not a top 10 caliber player. He's just a good person that I would probably draft more so later in the first round. I have a late first round grade on him. And that's just kind of how this draft class is. But like I said, for anybody that watched my first round, my mock draft that I had the Bears going with Mike Green. I love his tape. He's a phenomenal player. Now off the field, that is the question that the Bears will have to ask. And that's what I think when you look at all these different defensive ends, that's going to be the biggest question mark is if you want to go defensive end, then what question do you feel like you have the best answer on? And the big thing that I want to just talk about with Mike Green is I know in this society, like we want to jump to conclusions. All his sexual assault allegations are allegations. I'm not defending anything. I'm just saying that we've seen this, unfortunately, with professional athletes when it comes down to allegations and allegations that eventually might become not guilty and not even true. That's where I think it just boils down to what actually happened. Is he actually guilty? And do the Bears trust this guy? And it all goes down to that. So it's a difficult situation, but that's what I think it really kind of boils down to with Mike Green. I don't think James Pierce is going to be someone that they really look at. Like I said, he's only 245 pounds, doesn't fit the size profile that they would want, but I love just how fast he is off the edge. Personality-wise, I don't love hearing that his teammates don't necessarily love him, but that's where it just kind of boils down to. I still think that if they were to go with someone, it would probably be Mikael Williams. Mike Green, to me, is the most talented. You just have, character concerns. But then as you just go down the road, I just don't necessarily see the Bears wanting to go with the Jalen Walker. The only way that I would see them wanting to go with like a Jalen Walker is if they wanted a linebacker, because he was a former linebacker shifting more kind of into that defensive end role, kind of like that Hassan Reddick type of player. I just don't really see him as an edge rusher. He doesn't really use his hands all that great. Like he's got a quick first step. He can move very quick. He's fast, but I just don't really see him using his hands all that much. So that's why I just don't necessarily see the whole fit unless they think that, hey, this 6'1", 243 guy can rush the passer on the outside edge. So that's just some of the main first round prospects. I know we didn't touch too much on it, but Shamar Stewart, hard pass. He's really not been productive, but someone's out there is going to have to take a risk on him because just crazy athlete out of Texas A&M. And Donovan Azaraku, I just don't necessarily see him as someone that the Bears would like, so to speak. 6'2", 248, kind of fits more of an outside linebacker. but I really like him. He's my edge 4. I really like how productive he is. And you just see like the hand usage, the speed, just being able to bend the edge, something that's just really fun to watch. That probably smaller defensive end, projected to go in the late first, just doesn't necessarily seem like a Bears guy. But let me know, who do you think the Bears, if they go with defensive end, who do you think that they will take at that spot? So let's keep on moving and let's talk about the second round players, the second round defensive ends, because like we said, this is a very deep class. And if we look at the defensive ends that should be around in the second round, I think that there's this giant group that's all kind of smushed together. And that's Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M, Landon Jackson out of Arkansas, JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State, Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State, and Princely Umanmielen. And out of this group, this is a very talented group that has always kind of stuck together. Nick Scorton was projected to actually be a first-round draft pick. But what ended up happening is he didn't necessarily have the same year that people were kind of expecting him to have. He's a junior, 6'3", 257, so pretty beefy. So seems like something that the Bears would like, and pretty good pass rush grade, 80.6. But it just felt like everybody at Texas A&M just didn't get sacks for some reason. Even though he had 28 hurries, only 4 sacks on the season. Nick Scorton should have been a first rounder, but he seems to be the odd man out. That is in my guess, I kind of see him dropping to the second, because like we were saying before, how many people are actually going to be taking defensive ends in this first round? Yes, Todd McShay has 7 first-round grades on him. Doesn't mean that all of them are going to be out there. Scorton, being one of those people that is more that second-round grade for him, should probably be there, surprisingly, at that number 39 pick. But a very powerful profile to his game, and that's why I think that the Bears might actually end up liking him. But the person that I think everybody is kind of mocking to the Bears as that second-round guy, it is Landon Jackson. And the big reason why Landon Jackson, 6'6", 264, like we said, that's the profile that they've kind of been going with. Now, the downside is that's not necessarily that profile, it's just the overall pass rush ability. 72.2 pass rush grade, 6.5 sacks, and 11% pass rush win rate, which is very, very, very abysmal. Now, if you're the Bears and you're looking at him, you have to ask yourself, what can I teach this guy to get the most out of him? Because he went over to the combine and tested very well. He's got a very good athletic profile with him. But when you see him kind of rush the passer, right? What happens when the pads are on? Well, as soon as the pads are on, this guy being 6'6", he pops straight up out of his stance. You don't see him get low. You don't see him use any sort of leverage. He just kind of pops straight up. So he's good when it comes down to the whole power profile, stopping the run. But to me, it's you gotta at least show some of that pass rush upside. I didn't see as much as I'd like to see, but a lot of people mocking him to the Bears, saying he's kind of that Dennis Allen guy because of the size, right? It's really the size profile, not necessarily the pass rush productivity that you're kind of hoping to get out of him. So usually when you get someone like that hasn't done well rushing the passer, it does give you some question marks. But just a powerful guy, good athletic upside, just needs some coaching to get the most out of him. But like I said, there's some other players out there. I like Princely Umanmielen. He just weighed very, very light at the combine. I think that he's got some very, very good pass rush upside to him. So he's actually someone I really like. He does not anchor well. He's only 244 pounds. He's just always trying to penetrate. 91.5 pass rush grade when he was playing for Mississippi. 10.5 sacks last season. So yet again, very good pass rusher. When it comes down to running, for run grades, setting the edge, might be a little bit too light for Dennis Allen, but someone I really like Princely Umanmielen. The other person that actually kind of fits the Bears profile low key is JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State. 6'4", 265, so he's got the size. He's got the girth that the Bears would want at that position. 87.3 run defense grade. Seriously, one of the best run defenders in this class. He's kind of up there with Michael Williams. He's up there with Landon Jackson. And also don't sleep on his 12 and a half sacks. Now, when you put on the tape, yeah, there's some of those are kind of cleanup sacks, but I think that this guy just has a very, very good motor. You got to teach him a little bit more hand movements and a little bit, a good pass rush plan to attack the blocker in front of him. A lot of how he wins is that whole speed to power combo. Because of him being 265, him being a former 5-star recruit out of high school, you really do see this pop to his tape, this attack, this fierceness that he does go and attack the person in front of him. Now, he does need, like I said, he needs that plethora of counters and different moves to really get the most out of his game. And if he does, this guy's going to be darn good. But he does fit the Bears profile. Like we said, he's got the size, he's got the pass rush, stats, 77.7 grade, not great, but yet again, it's just the PFF grade. Also a 12.1% pass rush win rate, not necessarily great. Yet again, winning more so with just speed and power than necessarily moves. But reminds me of Tuli Tuipulotu coming out. He's been pretty darn good, I believe, with the Chargers. So not a bad comp. And the last guy I just want to talk about, Jack Sawyer, 6'4", 260. This is a Sam Hubbard guy. To me, high floor, low ceiling. So I'm curious to see where he ends up going. I see some people kind of pushing him back a little bit more into that 3rd round range. Yet again, if you have all these defensive ends, you might see one of those drop down into the 3rd round. Let me know down in the comments if there's a 2nd round guy that you like more than one of the others inside of this kind of group of 5. Let me know. But now let's get into the 3rd round, shall we? So the 3rd round, there are some pretty darn good guys in this 3rd round. And I actually just wanted to pull up the consensus ratings across, like past the 3rd round, where we were saying this is where there's a whole bunch of defensive ends. And a lot of them are projected to go 3rd round, 4th round. But man, it's a lot of these are just kind of flying up draft boards. And one person that I really like, that I just see now getting mocked even in the 2nd round, is Braden Swinson out of LSU. And this was someone that, as soon as I put on the tape, just went, wow. Like the first time I watched this guy, you don't see people that are going in day 2 that have the hands and the plethora of moves that Braden Swinson has. And he's 6'3", 255. So not amazing size, but still, like that's good. It's good size. It's just not Dennis Allen size. This guy, 22.1 pass rush win rate. He had 1 year as a starter. And just seriously, when you put on the tape, you're like, I thought I was watching a 1st round caliber guy. You saw it right out of the stance. You do not see somebody that has this great of skill set going in the 2nd round. Also too, really liked his first step. Great bend off the edge. Now, the negatives, right? If I see this 1st round tape, why is he still kind of going 2nd, 3rd round? Well, a big reason, it's just kind of the power profile. When we talk about some of these defensive ends, like a Princely Umanmielen, some of their run defense grades, like for PFF, was a little bit higher than you would say, right? Because they're more of a penetrator rather than someone who's trying to anchor. That's kind of what Mike Green does as well. He's trying to penetrate rather than just be kind of an anchor. So Braden Swinson doesn't necessarily project best to a 4-3 defensive end that you want someone a little bit larger for, but still, everybody runs nickels anyways. But I think that Braden Swinson has some incredible upside, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's like the steal in the 2nd round that somebody drafts a little bit higher and people go, what? And then he just ends up being incredible. Just very, very good. 43 hurries, 9 sacks, 8 QB hits, 22.1 pass rush win rate. Absolutely crazy out there. But 69.6 run grade, not great. Yet again, someone that can instantly be a rotational pass rush specialist for you. So someone who I really like. But one of the people that I think a lot of people are mocking to the Chicago Bears in that 3rd round range, if they don't go with someone in the 1st or 2nd, which would be a very, very risky move for the Bears to do, but someone to at least just keep an eye out for that fits that Bears profile, is Jordan Birch out of Oregon. 6'4", 279 pounds, so very, very big body. Reminds me of Dayo Adengbo. His biggest, how he wins is just with his pure, raw strength. He's going to bull rush you. He's just going to try and attack you. He's just going to try to destroy you. And quite frankly, he did a lot. 8.5 sacks, 20 hurries, 2 quarterback hits, had a 15.7 pass rush win rate. Not great. I always like to see it kind of in that 20. 81.3 pass rush grade. And some of the negatives. You just don't see a lot of finesse with this game. You don't see a lot of hand movements like you see with like a Braden Swinson. Birch just tries to win with his power. Kind of reminds me of like an off-brand version of Shamar Stewart, where he's just trying to attack with power, but he actually wins a lot more than Shamar Stewart, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, great first step, pairs up the quickness with the strength, but also too, even though that he's super powerful, not great in the run game. A 2.9 run stop grade, which is actually horrible. That's actually probably the worst in the entire draft class. Also a 68.1 run grade. So yes, he is big, but that run profile you really have to teach because he's trying to attack, does not, he needs to learn how to anchor and really just be an asset when it comes down to the run team. So overall, Jordan Birch fits the profile, but not necessarily in love with his game. I like him, especially in that third round. But yeah, nothing that, like, as you can already tell by me talking about Braden Swinson, I think that Braden Swinson's a better prospect. Really like what he's got on tape. But now let's just talk a little bit about some of the other people inside of that kind of third round range, just to at least bring up. And some of those that have kind of the power profile that the Bears might be looking at is Elijah Roberts out of SMU. Some think that more of a D tackle, but he's 6'6", 274, 90.8 pass rush win grade. Just a gigantic human being, big, beefy guy. It seems like he's trying to fit at that defensive end spot. Reminds me a little bit of DeMarcus Walker. Had an elite 90.6 PFF grade last season. Yet again, tweeners always kind of have some questions. Not a great short area quickness guy too. Struggles like kind of going side to side a little bit. But man, downhill, this guy is a mammoth. And same thing with Jared Ivey out of Mississippi. These are two players with Ivey and Elijah Roberts that if the Bears want somebody in the third round, like Elijah Roberts is actually the number 140th on the consensus big board, but Jared Ivey at number 93, like if you trade back a little bit, maybe one of these drops into like the fifth round. I don't love the idea of waiting for a defensive end all the way down there. But these are just two big guys. Jared Ivey, 6'6", 274 as well. Just two very big profiles that some have said maybe defensive tackle, but actually they can play that defensive end spot. And with Jared Ivey, a 90.8 pass rush grade as well, but then also another elite over 90 PFF grade, had 8 sacks, 31 hurries, and just, yet again, these guys are just very, very powerful guys, can rush to the passer, gives you the length and some pretty good pop when it comes down to speed, except for Jared Ivey, kind of lacks it a little bit with his first step. But you still see when he gets going, he's pretty fast, but it's the first step quickness, just right off the get-go, don't necessarily see too much. But also Ivey pops up a little bit in his stance. Those guys are the larger scale defensive ends that if the Bears want to try and get in that third, even kind of in that fourth round range, if they were to trade back with some of these picks. So now I want to talk about a couple other round 3 players, and then I'll just talk about the sleepers. Then we'll just be done with all of the defensive ends. There's a lot more that we need to cover. I'm actually trying to shorten this as fast as possible just because there's so many that we're covering, and there's still so many that we haven't even touched, that we haven't even talked about. And just to kind of close out some of these round 3 players, there's now the smaller guys that are starting to get a lot of buzz in the third round and fourth round. And one of those is Josiah Stewart. Now, I know that there's a Josiah Stewart hive. And if that's you, rise up. Let me hear you. Let me hear the Josiah Stewart fans out there. Michigan, 6'1", 249. And there's 2 smaller defensive ends that are getting a lot of buzz right now. And that's Josiah Stewart and David Walker out of Central Arkansas. Josiah Stewart, to me, is the one that I like a lot more than David Walker. Josiah Stewart coming out of Michigan, 6'1", 249, 8.5 sacks last season, but a 27.7 pass rush win rate in the Big Ten. That's insane. Absolutely insane. And how he wins is he just freaking flies. And he uses his low leverage to his advantage. He knows he's 6'1". He gets underneath him and really just gets around him. And I think of like an Elvis Doomerville, how Doomerville was a shorter profile, but I always heard people say like he was so hard because he would just get underneath your pads. And since he had the lower leverage, he would usually win. And that's what it feels like with Josiah Stewart. He just will get underneath you, use that leverage, use his first step quickness, and then get to the quarterback. But man, he just wins. 92.3 pass rush grade. I don't necessarily see the Bears winning or like picking him up. He also reminds me of Sutton Smith, the Northern Illinois guy, where just constantly won. But Sutton Smith didn't necessarily do too much. I like Josiah Stewart a little bit more to potentially translate, but it's always tough when they are smaller like a Josiah Stewart. But I just think that he's such a dog. I just want to see him do so much. It's his measurables that are negative. Also, too, being critical, I would like to see a little bit more moves out of his entire pass rush arsenal so he could get a little bit better there. But the other smaller guy, David Walker, I'm a little bit lower on him than necessarily others. Some people like have him in the third round. I think that he's kind of right where he needs to be at that overall player of number 145. He's 6'1", 263 coming out of Central Arkansas, dominated the competition, the highest graded PFF defensive end coming out. And he reminds me of Muhammad Kamara, who came out last season, where I saw a lot of the buzz. I just wasn't there with Muhammad Kamara, and I'm kind of there with David Walker as well. He's just a bull rusher, just plows through the guy, and it's because he's 263 pounds at 6'1", and his lower half, huge thighs. He just tries to just bull rush you with just his raw strength, his raw power. His entire frame is maxed out, but man, like that's where I just kind of question him and kind of throw the Muhammad Kamara comp on him, where just someone that I think dominated the college game. I don't necessarily see it translating as well as like a Josiah Stewart. I think Josiah Stewart from a smaller profile projects better. Also, Josiah Stewart, the consensus number 76 overall player on the consensus big board. So that's really kind of the round three people. There's Olu Oladejo. He's a linebacker from UCLA that translated over as a defensive end. He's someone to at least look out for. I don't think that the Bears would go after him. He's a traitsy pass rusher, good movement skills, long arms, 6'3", 259, still trying to learn how to be a defensive end. Very inexperienced. So kind of like the Jalen Walker light, right? Former linebacker, has some of the traits, looks very fluid, but someone that you can kind of get in that third round range. Not necessarily a Chicago Bear is what I'm kind of seeing. So other than that, let's get into just some of the sleepers, and then we'll just wrap the show up. So with the sleepers, like I said, there's not a lot because there's so many. Like when we threw up the graphic, there's so many players like Ashton Gillette that we haven't talked about, Kyle Kennard that we haven't gone about, Savion Jones, who actually big, powerful profile out of LSU, projected to go 118 right now. And Baron Sorrell out of Texas, believe it or not a huge Sorrell guy out of Texas. Even though that a lot of you know my love for the Longhorns, I'm not super high on him, but still 136. Lots and lots of good defensive ends. But I'm looking later. I'm looking at rounds like that round 5, round 6, and don't necessarily love many of the defensive ends. I think if the Bears want one, get one early. And that's where the meat is. But if I had to say sleepers, people that I kind of like, I have like 1.5. Someone, I like Antoine Powell Ryland out of Virginia Tech. Do I think that he's a Chicago Bear? No, not really. He's 6'2", 258. So even though he's 6'2", carries his weight really well. The reason why I don't think he's really a Bear, I see him more as an outside linebacker. But this guy, he fits the profile. He fits a good edge rusher profile. In that Magic Quadrant analytics that I like to look at, he fits the mold of athletic, and also very productive. He had 16 sacks at Virginia Tech last season, 25 hurries, 9 quarterback hits, and 3 forced fumbles. And this guy just, yet again, uses his leverage. He understands that he's a shorter pass rusher, gets underneath his blockers, uses his leverage, good first step, just gets past him. Now, downside, with him being a little bit smaller, he just doesn't have that natural length that you want to see out of a defensive end. And that's why more of an outside linebacker than, say, a defensive end inside of our system. So that's where, to me, I like him. I think that he's probably has some very, very good upside for someone as a situational pass rusher. I just don't think the Bears would actually want to try and take a stab at him. And last guy, someone that I'm not saying that he's going to be a sleeper and going to be absolutely crazy. I'm just really intrigued by him. That's Q Robinson out of Alabama, 6'5", 241. Yet again, there's not a lot of people for the Bears in these later rounds because the bigger guys just don't have the step, don't have the production that you want. But Q Robinson only played 246 snaps last year, and then the other previous 2 seasons, less than 100 out of Alabama. I just wanted to call him out because he's just one of those traits guys that might go a little bit higher than expected just because he pops on tape. He's quick, he's fast, but he's yet again another 3-4 outside linebacker at that 241 weight, but 24% pass rush win rate, absolutely crazy. 90.3 pass rush grade, very small sample size, but just lightweight, limited snaps, and 2, when he's running out there, it's a lot of just power, trying to just run around you, or speed, trying to run around you, not a lot of moves. So some of that kind of reminds me of Chris Braswell coming out, where Braswell coming out of Alabama, kind of toolsy, trying to win with a little bit more speed. Q Robinson, like I said, Braswell was like the super off-brand version of Will Anderson. And then Q Robinson is like the dollar store version of that, where you see the traits, but he's just a toolsy person that I could see somebody trying to take a stab at. But let me know. I know that I did not go through all the defensive ends. I have a lot more out inside of the draft guide that you can go and review. Hope you enjoyed this show. We have a lot more people to be covering out there in the NFL draft. So I hope to keep you around, and make sure to like and subscribe so that you do not miss an episode. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair and